Hello dear friends, I'm Samuel Moore and welcome to my Study with Samuel video series. Many of the most striking and memorable passages you will hear in Soleá derive from something called the Escobilla. In an ensemble context, the Escobilla is a section of the form that acts as a showcase for the dancer's footwork. Most flamenco forms that have a dance element contain escobillas, and for each palo there are classic phrases that the guitarist commonly plays to accompany them. Even if your ambition is to play flamenco guitar solo, knowing what these phrases are is very important. With this in mind, today we're going to look at a classic Soleá Escobilla phrase and look at a couple of ways you can embellish it to add more variety to your playing. It's important to mention from the outset that there are many traditional ideas that can be used to accompany the Escobilla, but as this is one of the most classic ones, it's a good point of departure. Let's start by learning the basic idea. This. So let's break that apart and find out what's going on. From a chord perspective, there are only 4 chords you need to worry about. A minor, C major, F major 7, and E major. And in terms of the compass, these chords are changing every 3 beats. So they're kind of going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And if you add those 4 groupings of 3 beats together, it gives you the full 12-beat compass. In other words, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So, in terms of how flamenco players often bring those chords to life, they have a very simple melody in the bass, normally played with the thumb, rest stroke. So let's just analyse it in 3 beat chunks. On the A minor chord, we basically have a simple bass line that goes A, then bring this finger up here to the B, and now the open D is available, so that's the one that you play. So what that gives you is 1, 2, 3. Then, when we move to the C major chord, we start by playing C, and then we play the E note, so the one that this finger's playing, and straight after that we put the pinky here on F. And that's on the and of the beat, so it's basically going 4, 5, and then finally on the G on beat 6. So it's basically 4, 5 and 6. Put that with what you've already got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then on beat 7 we move to this chord and we start by playing the F bass note on its own. Then bring this finger up behind the F so that we can basically conclude by going 8, 9. So in other words, E and F. So it's F, but with the full chord down, then E, F. 7, 8, 9. And then we conclude on beats 10, 11 and 12 with the classic Soleá closing phrase. 10, 11, 12. You can play that, by the way, rest stroke with the thumb, free stroke with the index, drag the thumb down on the 4th and 3rd string, and then using the thumb strike down across strings 2 and 1, combined with a golpe with this finger, thus giving you 10, 11, 12. It's worth mentioning that any of the classic closing phrases I showed you in my previous video on Soleá can be used there. So, you could use or. Any of those will work. I won't go into detail with those now, but just be mindful that you can use them. And if you want to reference them, check out my video, Soleá Compass Embellishments. So what you've got here is the basic bass line for this phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So far so good. Now, when playing this simple bass line, flamenco musicians commonly bring it to life by doing some interesting things with this hand. So let's just look at a few of them now. We'll do it in 3 beat chunks. On beats 1, 2 and 3, we're going to do a very simple arpeggio. So we're going to line these 3 fingers up on strings 3, 2 and 1. And for each bass note, you're going to go 1, 2, 3. So in other words, the first one would sound like this. Then this, and then this. Thus giving you 1, 2, 3. Let's now move to the next 3 beats. So on beats 4, 5 and 6 we move to the C chord and we start with exactly the same arpeggio pattern. We go 4 and then we play the remainder of the phrase as we did before. With one exception. When we get to the open G string, you can add a golpe in if you want to emphasise beat 6. So in other words, 7, 8, my apologies, 4, 5, 6. Okay? So that's the basic idea you can work with so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On beats 7, 8 and 9, land the chord and we're going to do the classic arpeggio. So basically the bass note and then 1, 2, 3. But when we get to these bass notes, the ones that go E and F, we're going to do something slightly different. We're just going to do an index finger free stroke on the and of each beat. So in other words, it's going to go 7, so that's the arpeggio, and then when you get to this, it's going to go 8 and 9 and. Okay? 7, 8 and 9 and then the closing phrase as normal. 10, 11, 12. Put all this together and you get a classic Soleá Escobilla phrase. Let's loop it a few times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's the classic Soleá Escobilla phrase, and it's a great one to have in your arsenal of ideas for when you're performing. Before we continue with today's lesson, I'd like to do a quick shout out to let you know about my new Patreon account. For those of you who've never come across Patreon before, Patreon is a unique crowdfunding platform that allows artists like myself to offer exclusive content in exchange for monthly pledges. Your generosity allows me to continue working as a full-time musician, and in exchange you get access to some really great material, from unseen tutorial videos similar to this one, to flamenco guitar lessons. You even get access to my weekly gathering, the Midweek Guitar Meet. This weekly study group takes place on Wednesday evenings and is a great opportunity to connect with a global community of like-minded musicians who share your passion at the same time as getting targeted feedback from myself on a regular basis. So if all this sounds interesting to you, please click the link in the description below to access my Patreon page and select an option that works for you. I look forward to meeting you, connecting with you, and together continuing our musical journey. Now, however, let's get back to today's lesson. Now, when performing the Soleá Escobilla, it's very common to need to vary your ideas because you might have to play this more than once. In fact, you probably will. I'm not going to teach you hundreds of ideas today, but what I am going to do is show you a couple of concepts that you can start applying to your playing. So there are really two things you can do to really embellish this phrase. You can change the bass line, or you can alter the arpeggio patterns you're using. So let me show you a couple of ideas to help with this. Everything's going to stay roughly the same, but on the A chord, instead of having this pattern, we're now going to do a triplet arpeggio on the first beat. So we're going to play the bass note, and the fingers are lined up on 1, 2 and 3 as normal, but we're going to go forwards, so 3, 2, 1, and then back straight away, 2, 3. So it's basically bass, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3. And that's all in the space of one beat. It's basically it's two triplets back to back. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's the first beat. 1. Then come up to here as normal, but instead of just playing the bass note on its own, we're going to use the pinky to hammer on from B to C. So it's basically going to go 2 and. Put that with what you've already got. 1, 2 and. Then take everything away apart from this finger. What you're going to do, you've got to there, you're going to take these away and you're going to do the open D as you did before, but with a golpe. And you're going to use the second finger to hammer on to E and pull off again to the D. So it's, put that together and you get 1, 2, 3. So that may seem complicated and you may be thinking at this point, oh my goodness, the rest of it's going to be really hard. Not quite so, because when we move to C on beats 4, 5 and 6, you're going to use exactly the same pattern. So the same arpeggio on the C chord, then we're going to use the hammer-on phrase here, so we're going to play E, and then hammer on to the F, and then take all of this away apart from this finger, and play the open G with a golpe, and then hammer on with the second finger to A, and pull off again. So you see what I mean? It's the same basic pattern. This was the one on A minor, and this is the one on C. They're very similar, they're just using slightly different variations. Beats 7, 8 and 9, again we're going to keep it very similar to what we originally did, except on beat 7, instead of going, we're now going to use the triplet arpeggio. Okay, so that's beat 7, and then everything else stays the same. And then we resolve as normal. Very simple but very effective, thus giving you the full embellishment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, notice then I chose not to do the hammer-on one of the phrases. You don't have to put the hammer-on in, it's optional. But if you want it in, and straight away you've got a lovely variation on the original idea. So a great little thing that you can do, try looping the two back to back, and straight away it sounds really exciting. I'll quickly demonstrate. There you go. You've now seen how, in principle, you can easily change the Escobilla just by reworking some of your arpeggios and reworking some of your bass lines. It's also worth mentioning one last thing before we conclude. Whenever you're playing this type of Escobilla phrase, any of the variations for beats 7, 8 and 9 that I previously taught you in my Soleá compass embellishments video will work. So for instance, you may remember this from my previous video, but if you haven't, check it out. There was a phrase that sounded like this. So we basically had the chord and we went. So that was basically 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm not going to talk you through how to play that because that's in my previous video. If you want that, please head over and check that one out. But the point I'm trying to make is this. Let's say you just want to incorporate that instead of the 7, 8, 9 phrases for any of the Escobilla ideas I've shown you. You can do so. You could play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And instead of going 7, 8, 9, you could go 7. You see what I mean? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'll just demonstrate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It still works because you're basically still in the same harmonic place on the F chord as you are when you're playing the compass. So very quickly, if you implement this idea, you can have many variations on just the two I've shown you. So try working your way through that and see how you get on. I leave all this in your capable hands. Well, my friends, I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. But if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the bell icon to receive notifications. There'll be more videos coming soon. If you want to study with me on a more one-to-one basis, you can book Skype and Zoom lessons via my website. A link is in the description below. Until we next see each other, you stay safe, and as always, thank you for watching.